I actually think that Panasonic may have done themselves a disfavor making a lens that's so good, especially for video. Hi there everybody, hope all is well. Today we're gonna have a look at this, the Panasonic 20 to 60mm. It's a kit lens and we're gonna talk about why it could be the best kit lens ever made. Stay tuned. If you're wondering how this lens looks like when shooting at 3.5 or 20mm, that's actually what I'm doing right now. So you can see how is the background, do I get any blur? Of course I do. It's full frame, it's 3.5. It's almost as going down to f1.7 something in micro four thirds. So there are a few quite obvious things to why I really like this lens. Number one is gonna be, let's see if I can get it here. Number one is going to be the focal range. 20 to 60 is actually my favorite focal range because 20 is, for me, the perfect wide amount. I think 24 for a lot of usage, especially if you're a content creator, 24 is a little bit too tight. 20 on the other side, you can actually use this for vlogging as well. And on many cameras, 20mm is actually that sweet spot for vlogging because you don't actually get too warpy corners, so that's really great for vlogging. Also on the long range, 60mm instead of 70 as many lenses are is actually not that big of a difference. So having a lens that's 20 to 60 for me is actually better than having a lens that's 24 to 70. I actually have two of these lenses, which lets me go to the other thing. This lens is actually dirt cheap. I think you pay $200 or $300 extra if you're getting a Panasonic body to get this lens, and for me that's actually a really great deal. At least as far as I know, on any other kit lenses, having a weatherproof lens on a body like the S5 Mark II and the Mark IIX, it's really great because right now we're shooting in the rain and I don't even have to think about my camera getting damaged. I actually trust the Panasonic weather sealing to a T. I've actually been to the rainforest in Costa Rica with Panasonic cameras in the monsoon rain and they were fine afterwards, which was honestly crazy. Crazy! There are a lot of things to love about this lens. One of the things to love is that you actually have quite good close focusing distance with this lens, so you can actually get those medium macro shots, almost macro. Now, I really love the macro 100mm macro that Panasonic made, but you can actually in a pinch use this as a macro lens on the wide side, which is really great. So fourth thing that you get on this lens that you don't see on many other lenses is that this lens is basically parfocal. That means that when you're zooming in and out with your camera, the focal plane will stay at the same place, which is a killer feature if you're a videographer. And that's a feature that you don't even get on really high-end Sony lenses or Canon lenses. So this is basically a Panasonic feature that you see on their really expensive lenses, but also on this lens. So a quick tip for you guys, if you need a fixed aperture while zooming in and out so you don't get that exposure change that you don't want, set your aperture to 5.6 on this lens and you can zoom in and out as much as you want and you don't have to think about the exposure changing. So that's a quick tip from me. Let's go. So one thing that's as good as the 20 to 60mm is Artlist. If you watch my channel, you probably know that all my music on this channel have through the years been from Artlist. And what I mostly love about Artlist is how you find and search for music. 90% of the time I go in and search by mood and by genre. After a little search I do find the perfect music. So if you want 2 months off in an annual subscription, go down to the description and get the code there. Go get that Artlist, guys. What I want to show you guys with this scene is what happens on this lens when you focus from something very close, like the stone over here, until where you go to infinite focus and where you can see Kallbadhuset i Malmö, for example. What happens in the edges is this lens zooming in anything at all, because there is an artifact called focus breathing. A lot of Sony lenses have this, and honestly most photography lenses has it. When you change your focus, they zoom in and zoom out quite a lot. Whereas when it comes to Panasonic cameras and lenses, they don't have this issue where you can zoom from one place or focus from one place to another and you won't have that change in focus in the corners. two really obvious things that are actually a good thing in my eyes is that it has a filter thread of 67mm, which is great if you are a Panasonic user and you want to invest in the primes that Panasonic makes, the f1.8 primes. This is really great because all those lenses have the exact same filter thread as well. So if you want to change filters between this lens and those lenses, well, Panasonic got you covered. Another thing that's really great with this lens Another thing that's really great with this lens is that this lens is actually very fast when it comes to focusing, as almost all Panasonic other lenses are, so nothing strange there. Another thing that's going to be really obvious as well is that this lens is not a heavy lens. If you look at the 24-70, which is a lens that I really like, it's a Leica branded lens as well, which this is not. This is not a heavy lens. So it has those great features. It's not too big, it's not too heavy, and also it's very cheap as well. I believe a lot of people, the 20-60 is a great tool that you can get for so little money. But I wouldn't actually swap it for the 24-70. I would almost say that these two lenses could live side by side with each other. Now, a lot of the things that we've talked about, all the features are very nice when it comes to videography. And if you're a photographer, of course you have to think about other things. Think too much about focus breathing or it being parfocal, because it doesn't matter. And one thing that also doesn't matter as much in video, my opinion of course, is the variable aperture, or the lack of it being too fast of an aperture. When it comes to photos, I feel that it's much more important to have a lens that gives you that separation from the background. When it comes to video, you're always moving. I don't feel that it's as important because you're working with things that move all the time and you have that natural motion blur. But when it comes to photography, it's much more important to have that natural separation. So having an f2.8 zoom is much more important for photography than it is in videography. And that's only my opinion. I have some thoughts on this lens. And I almost think that Panasonic made a lens that was a little bit too good for their own well-being. This lens is that good that I almost go out and reach out for this lens almost as often as for 24-70. The 24-70 is a Leica lens. The image quality on that lens is beautiful. I won't say anything about that. But this lens is so much smaller. Also, it has that wide 20mm field of view, which is killer. So at times I feel like I could almost have this as my only zoom lens in the normal focal range. And only do with the f1.8 primes and be really fine with that as well. So in some ways, I actually think that Panasonic may have done themselves a disfavor making a lens that's so good, especially for video. So guys, if you're a Panasonic shooter and you're using this lens, I would like to know your thoughts about it. Are you using it? Aren't you using it? What do you think about this lens? For me, it's actually the best kit lens ever made. Until next time, see you soon.